Alright, in this video we will continue to practice evaluating trig functions without using a calculator. These are going to turn out to be special angles like 45 degrees, 30 degrees, 60 degrees, or 90 degrees. And of course in radians, that's pi over 4, pi over 6, pi over 3. You need to memorize these three yellow trig function values. Alright, and be familiar with the radian form and the degree form. Because if you know those, you can get everything else. So, number 12. Alright, the cotangent of 150 degrees. Well, cotangent is one of those reciprocal functions. So, as soon as I see that, I say to myself, well, let's start with tangent. Alright, let's find the tangent of negative 150 degrees first. And whatever we get from this, we'll do the reciprocal. Alright, and then will be cotangent. So great. Let's look at the unit circle and find the reference angle. Alright, so here's my unit circle. Alright, positive x-axis is where we always start. Negative 150, so I'm going clockwise. So look, if I went to here, that's negative 90. If I went all the way to here, that would be negative 180. That would be too far, so I'm not going to do that. Alright, I'm going to stop here in the third quadrant. So it's going to be somewhere in the third quadrant. Okay, like that. So this is my negative 150 degrees. Okay, so there's my negative 150 degrees. Had I kept going, then I would have gone to negative 180. So that means that the reference angle, which is right there, is going to be 30 degrees. It's the gap between 150 and 180 is 30 degrees. Okay, so that's my reference angle. So that means that the tangent of negative 150 will equal the tangent of 30 degrees, give or take a negative sign. It might need a negative sign on it. Now, to figure out whether or not it needs a negative sign, well, let's just break it down as sine and cosine. That's how we'll figure it out. Tangent is sine over cosine. So tangent of 30 degrees is the sine of 30 degrees over the cosine of 30 degrees. Now in this quadrant, well, first let me say, on the unit circle, every point x comma y that's on this circle is of the form cosine comma sine. So cosine is the x value, sine is the y value. So we just need to know what's positive, what's negative. In the third quadrant, the x value and the y value are both negative. That means sine and cosine are both negative here. But a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So that means the answer is going to stay positive. So we don't need to put a negative sign here. In fact, we can erase these little minus signs because they cancel out. Okay, now, these are two of the facts that we memorized. Alright, see they're right here in yellow. Alright, sine of 30 degrees and cosine of 30 degrees. Pi over 6 is 30 degrees. So you better have memorized them like I told you to. Otherwise, shame on you and you deserve what you get. Alright, sine of 30 degrees is 1/2. Cosine of 30 degrees is radical 3 over 2. So when you do the tangent and you divide, you notice how the denominators are the same. So it's going to wind up being just the numerators, 1 over radical 3. Okay, so now I've got this 1 over radical 3 happening. Okay, but cotangent is the reciprocal. So that's just going to be radical 3. Okay, because you got to do the reciprocal. So that's number 12. Number 13. All right, this time it's not reciprocal. Oh, we're doing radians now. I love radians. So let's get the unit circle poppin'. Let's get it poppin'. You see the 4 right there? That means we need 1/4 of a pi. The top half of this is pi, of course. So I'm going to take this and divide it into 4 equal parts. I'm talking about just the top needs to be split into 4 equal parts. Okay, that's how I know I'll have pi over 4 happening. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. So each of these is pi over 4. Alright, so that means all of these are pi over 4s. Now, of course, we start off in standard position. It's negative, so we go clockwise, and we're going to go -3 pi over 4s. So from here, that's like this, -1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's the terminal side of our angle. So that's the angle right there. But the reference angle, man, the reference angle is this guy right here. And that reference angle is pi over 4. I mean, it's always going to, when you're dealing with the radians and you got your special angles happening, it's just going to be the denominator. It's just going to be this right here every time. So yeah, that's a pi over 4 is the reference angle. So anyway, so that tells us that this is going to be the same thing as the cosine of pi over 4, except for maybe it needs a negative on it. Does it? Well, yeah, the cosine is the x value, and in this fourth quadrant over here, the x value is negative because to the left. So we'll have to put a negative sign on it. Now, the cosine of pi over 4 is one of the things that we memorized. Alright, well, we memorized that sine of pi over 4 is 1 over radical 2, and then cosine is the same thing. So that's it. So that's why we're going to have -1 over radical 2. And that's the final answer. That's it. Alright, number 14. Cosecant. It's one of those reciprocal trig functions. Cosecant is the reciprocal of the sine function. So let's start off by finding the sine of 7 pi over 6. And then whatever we get, we'll do the reciprocal of that. So let's graph it on our unit circle. So pi over 6. So I'm going to take my pi and I'm going to divide it up into 6 pieces. To do that, first I can cut it in half. Alright? And I can take each one of these and divide it into 3 slices. That would be a total of 6. So if I do that, it would be like this. Okay, I'm not real great at it. Okay, not the straightest lines in the world, but you can tell I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces. All right, that means that it's pi over 6. So what? Okay, so I've got my initial side, of course, is here, positive x-axis. Now here I go, 7 pi over 6s. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pi over 6 is going to be right here. Okay. Now, of course, the reference angle is this angle right here, and of course, each one of these is pi over 6, and we knew that from the start. That's one of the things that make radians convenient to work with. So we know that the sine of 7 pi over 6 is going to be the same thing as the sine of the reference angle pi over 6, except for maybe I need to put a negative sign on it. Well, on the unit circle, cosine is the x value and sine is the y value of any point on the unit circle. So here's my y-axis, right? And here's my x-axis. So we are clearly here in the third quadrant where sine and cosine are negative. So we're definitely going to need a negative on that. Okay, fine. So I've got negative. Now, sine of pi over 6 is one of the ones that we memorized. All right, that is right there. Sine of pi over 6 is 1/2. If you have not memorized these three yellow values yet, get on it. So yeah, so that's going to be 1/2. So that makes negative 1/2. But that's not the final answer because the cosecant is the reciprocal of this. So that's why it's going to be negative 2. Okay, because you had to go reciprocal with it. That was fun. Okay, 2 more. All right, and that'll be the end of this video. Okay, 2 more. Sine. All right, it's not even a reciprocal function, so it's going to be pretty easy. So I know that the reference angle is going to be pi over 6. All right, with radians, it's obvious. So I know this is going to equal the same thing as the sine of pi over 6. The only thing is maybe it needs a negative sign in front of it. To figure that out, I need to get it on the unit circle, so just so I know what quadrant it's in. That's the only reason for that. Okay, so I'm going to create a bunch of pi over 6's by dividing the top half into 6 pieces like I did on the last problem. So if I do that, it's going to be like this. Okay, I'm not really good at doing this, but it works anyway. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces up top. So these are all pi over 6's. So starting from my positive, you know what, let me get my x and y axis going first. So this is my x axis, this is my y axis. Okay, so my angle starting from the positive x axis. Now I'm going negative 5 pi over 6. That means clockwise. So that's negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's right there. Okay, this is in the third quadrant. On the unit circle, cosine is the x value and sine is the y value. So the y value is definitely negative in this quadrant, so I am going to need a negative sign on this value. So sine of pi over 6 is one of the ones that we have memorized. It is 1/2. Okay, memorize the yellow ones, people. And like I said, so it'll be negative 1/2. And it wasn't reciprocal, so that's it. That's the answer. All right, last problem. Tangent. All right, tangent is not reciprocal either, so that will save us a step. Radians. I love radians because I can just look at it and know the reference angle is pi over 3 without subtracting anything from anything. So I know that this will equal the tangent of the reference angle, the tangent of pi over 3. Only difference is maybe it needs a negative sign on it. So that's the only thing I have to be careful about. So let's see. The way I will know is by finding where this is on the unit circle. So let's do that. So here's my unit circle. I'm doing pi over 3. So the top half is pi, so I'm really just going to split this up into 3 pieces. Okay, 1, 2, 3 pieces up top. Okay, so I'm going to go 8 pi over 3's. So I'm starting here from my positive x-axis, and I'm going to go 8 pi over 3. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 8 pi over 3 right there. So that puts me right here. Okay, for my terminal side. Now, don't forget, my y-axis, which I didn't draw at first, is right here down the middle. Okay, and here's my x-axis. So that means that this is in the second quadrant. All right, in the second quadrant, I have a negative cosine function and a positive sine function. All right, because cosine is like the x value and sine is the y value of any point on the unit circle. So I have a positive sine up, a negative cosine because it's left. So that's going to help me decide what's going on here. So in the end, this is going to be negative, all right, because the thing is tangent is sine over cosine. So tangent is the same thing as sine of pi over 3 over cosine pi over 3. Since the sine is positive and the cosine is negative, then this tangent is going to wind up being negative overall. Anyway, sine and cosine of pi over 3. Those are not the yellow ones that I asked you to memorize. But if you know that sine of pi over 6 and cosine of pi over 6, 1/2, and radical 3 over 2, then you can quickly write down that the sine and cosine of pi over 3 are just reverse of that. So sine of pi over 3 will be radical 3 over 2, and cosine pi over 3 is 1/2. You just switch them for the pi over 3 version. Okay, so again, instead of being 1/2, I'll just put it down here. Instead of being 1/2, like pi over 6 for sine, it becomes your radical 3 over 2. And your cosine is your 1/2. Okay, so, and that one was negative. So what you're going to do is the denominators are the same, so you can really just focus your eyes on the numerators. It'll be this over this. So radical 3 over 1, so that'll be negative radical 3, because the 2's winds up canceling each other out. So that will be the final answer. Alright, that is a lot of practice on evaluating trig functions without a calculator. I hope that this was helpful. I will see you on the next video, guys.